Had an old hen, had a wooden leg, was the best old hen ever laid an egg. Laid more eggs than a hen around the barn. Another little drink wouldn't do me any harm. My old hen's a good old hen. She lays eggs for the railroad men. Sometimes one, sometimes two. That's enough for the railroad crew. Well, the first time she cackled in a lot. Next time she cackled, well, she cackled in the pot. Cluck, old hen, she clucked and said, cluck, old hen, now my witty's all dead.
So let's maybe talk a little bit about the winter market. It's probably 7 or 8 years ago now, the people who were managing the market said, let's see if we can try a winter market with as many of the same vendors as we had during the summer. And the winter market initially started at the Stonington Community Centre. And it was inside, obviously, because it was in the middle of winter. It's quite a small room. Parking became a bit of an issue. But what we found is that the farmers thought, well, if they have a place where they can sell their produce directly to retail that goes through the whole winter, and obviously January and February is a pretty low month for everyone, but they can certainly do another planting in late fall and get kale and spinach and greens, which grow in relatively cooler climates. They could also plant in high tunnels in the late winter and get another crop in spring, which was so essentially 2 more crops than what they'd normally do from the spring through the fall seasons. And so each of the vendors that were coming to the market started to grow additional product to supply to the winter market. So it's quite interesting that you see that if an opportunity is created, then people change their behaviours in order to profit and do well from from that change. So after maybe 3 or 4 years, we thought that maybe the Velvet Mill would be a great location because there's more parking and it's inside, and as you can see here, there's an amazing amount of light that comes in. And so we moved to the Velvet Mill probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm pleased to say it's starting. It's probably now an institutionalized Saturday market. One of the most difficult things about a market is getting to the point where a large number of people know that on a Saturday this market is on.
My name is Ethan.
My name is Richie.
And we work at the farmers market.
So what do you guys do here?
We help the vendors unload their trucks and pull their supplies into the mill.
Okay. So you help them bring all their wares into the room?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you like doing that?
I like it.
I like it too.
What do you like about it?
It's fun and it pays well.
It does.
Yeah.
And you get wonderful food.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
We are open for business. Woohoo! How's that? Okay.
Had an old hen, had a wooden leg, was the best old hen ever laid an egg. Laid more eggs than a hen around the barn. Another little drink wouldn't do me any harm. My old hen's a good old hen. She lays eggs for the railroad men. Sometimes one, sometimes two. That's enough for the railroad crew. first time she cackled in a lot. Next time she cackled, well, she cackled in the pot. Cluck, old hen, she clucked and said, cluck, old hen, now my witty's all dead. My old hen raised on a farm down in the new ground, pecking up the corn. My old hen, she won't do. She lays eggs and taters too. Old hen, cluck when I tell you, cluck, old hen, no, I'm gonna sell you.
Over winter and under fabric road cover. And if you don't get too severe and start to recover in spring, and in the spring you get this nice baby stuff. That's the stuff that the heck with that big honking stuff.
No chemicals either. I know.
Nope. The road cover protects it from insect damage, so you don't have to worry about spraying it and everything like that.
Do you come every Saturday morning to the farmer's market?
We try, but our kids keep us really busy. We have teenagers who don't drive yet, so they have us running all the time. So we try.
And what is it that you like best about the farmers market?
You feel the way like the building, and just there's a lot of really good vendors and
Fresh, farm fresh produce, eggs we come for, and there's usually a coffee guy who I don't see right. Oh, there's the coffee. Yes.
Yeah.
Best beans ever. So yes. So this is the dark roast whole bean coffee from C&D Coffee Roasters, which is a local roastery. They get their coffee from a farm in Colombia. It is all organic, and it is the best dark roast coffee bean I've ever found actually so far. We love making them in our Breville at home. We have a latte maker at home to make espresso, and we use this bean's our favorite right now with the grinders. We grind them and then we make our fresh lattes every morning with this coffee bean, and it has a nice rich chocolatey flavor, I'd say.
we were in withdrawal. We couldn't get here. We were in withdrawal. We couldn't get here last week.
We've been out for a week of this coffee, and we were making sure we came in early this morning to get it before it sold out. So I would definitely highly recommend this to any coffee drinker out there.
Stonington's actually a great place for a farmer's market because during the summer you have a fairly affluent increase or fairly large number of affluent people who come here for the weekends who don't want to get in their car, again after getting here, and the farmers market pretty much covered everything from vegetables to fish and meat and fruit. And cheeses and bread, that you could do most of your shop for the weekend or the week at the farmer's market and not have to get in your car and go to the supermarket. So as the years went by, it worked out well for the farmers. So we actually say that it's an invitation or curated farmers market, which seems a little bit strange in America, where we pride ourselves on capitalism, which is, it's a great system, but we have to find a balance between what the customers want and what works for the vendors. So having all of the vendors selling exactly the same thing isn't the best thing for the customers, and vice versa. So we tried to find a mix of vendors which provide as broad a range of produce, vegetables, cheeses, milk, bread, etc. And I constantly get requests for, I have a bakery and I'd like to, come and bring bread. And I thought, well, that's fine, but we unfortunately the market's only big enough to support one bread vendor and one, caterer and one dairy vendor, and one mushroom vendor. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and it's not particularly a free market in some ways. But what we're trying to do is to make sure that it works for the vendors, because if the farms don't want to come along, then we don't have a farmers market. And if the customers find that they can't, they can only get 20 or 30% of what they're looking for, then that won't bring them back the next week and the week after. So going back to the beginning of the farmers market, we started with 5 or 6 vendors. As the years went by, it got larger, and we then needed to move across to the field on the other side of the road, which was probably about 30% larger. In the summer market, it became institutionalized. It was not particularly difficult to run, and we didn't at that time we had 1 or 2 craft vendors, and maybe about 10 years ago we thought, let's see if we could increase the interest in the market by adding craft vendors. And a craft vendor is a person who's made something themselves, and in the market, I think, so it became a bit more like I call it like a small fair, where instead of just going and doing your shopping around, and you could talk to the vendors, you could get a cup of coffee, you could sit at the table, you could get a breakfast sandwich. We added music fairly early on as well. And so one of the things I've noticed over the years is, instead of people rushing in and rushing out, it's a bit more of a community event where you can go, and you always run into people, and back when my kids were young, I'd say, well, let's go to the market, and then they'd start to roll their eyes and say, well, how long are you going to be? And I said, look, maybe like 30 minutes. And an hour later, I would have been caught up talking to a whole stack of different people, and they'd be not wanting to come back again. But I think that's one of the great things about the market. Another great thing about the market is it's very dog friendly. So both here at the Velvet Mill, as well as at Town Dock, it's a dog friendly place, and I'm amazed how many people are looking, particularly in the winter, for a place where they can go and walk, where it's not cold and miserable outside, and there'll be other dogs there. And in 2 or 3 years ago, we added a dog treat vendor, and I wasn't too sure whether a dog treat vendor was a suitable vendor to have at a farmer's market, but because we had so many dogs, I thought, well, let's give it a go, and we'll see. And one of the interesting things here in the Velvet Mill is the dogs come in to one of the doors, and they know exactly where the dog treat vendor is, and the dogs will lead their owners straight around to the dog treat vendor, and they have to have their dog treat before they can go and do the rest of their shopping. One of the most difficult things about a market is getting to the point where a large number of people know that on a Saturday this market is on.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm from North Stonington, Connecticut, and I love the farmers market because it's always fresh food, it's really nice, it's dog friendly. I love that I can take my little guy here and we can walk around and enjoy the company of other dogs, and the vendors are all really nice, so we enjoy it. Say hi, Blake.
Oh, he's so cute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Root vegetables, so the cellar vegetables which will always winter over, but now they had a place to sell them all the way through the winter. And it's amazing how the pears and the apples and the squashes will last really a long time in a cellar, and those items, as well as garlic and onions, are absolutely fine months after they have come out of the ground, providing they've been stored in a dry, cool place.
And they still have eggs.
Correct, and I suppose that I sort of forget about, the cheese can be made anytime, providing there's the milk is available. The chickens are pretty amazing that they will lay all the way through the winter. There's a couple of times when they don't lay. If they get stressed or it gets like a really bad weather, they'll decrease the number of eggs that they're laying, but there's always fresh eggs, there's milk, there's always cheese, there's always handmade bread. So after a few years at the Stonington Como, we thought, listen, it's a successful enough winter market that if we could find a location which had more parking and a bigger space, then that would be ideal. And so a decision was made to move the market to the Velvet Mill, which is where we're filming this little interview, and it's been a wonderful location. The high ceilings, the light that comes in, the adequate parking just made it a much more conducive place for people to come and spend a longer period of time at market. And interestingly, there's some differences between the people who come to the summer market versus the winter market. The winter market, it's often the worst weather days are the days where people want to come to the farmers market, because if they've got kids or if they've got a dog, then they can come and they can have a coffee and they can walk around and they can see their friends in a very relaxed environment, and they can also do some of their shopping for the week. With the winter market, we introduced a kids program, and so each week at 11 o'clock at the moment we have a different activity, and that may be making pottery, it may be face painting, it might be kids yoga, it may be some exercise activity, and what our goal there was to try to find families with young kids who are looking for something to do on a Saturday morning, and bring the whole family to the farmers market. Musicians who play the type of music that you'd expect to find at a farmers market, with fiddles and banjos, and we have a rotating group of guest musicians as well who come along and play a whole variety of music, and whilst it might be in the background, they are they're at the entrance. I'll call it the entrance. There's many different doors of ways to get into the Velvet Mill, but the the entrance, which probably 70% of the people use, is a ramp that they come up, and the first thing they probably hear is the music from the musicians, and then as they move into the market, that the music it's a bit more of a background, but I think it creates a wonderful atmosphere that makes you feel like I've just gone to another place. I've stepped away from a car park or my busy life, and we're now in this big light-filled space which has got vendors and kids running around and dogs everywhere as well. The customers who come to the market are there's people who come every week, there's people who come every few weeks, there's people who come less frequently, but all of these people have one thing in common, and that one thing in common is they want to know what the source of their food is, and the food that you're buying at a farmer's market has been harvested either the day before or early in the morning, and certainly when we get into the middle of summer, it means that the farmers have got up incredibly early to, whether it's hand picking the strawberries or the blueberries, or harvesting the asparagus, which is going to be in a big bucket of water on the table 3 or 4 hours later. So there's a number of benefits of buying or shopping at a farmer's market. One is you know where your food has come from. I think more importantly, you know it's local. So it wasn't flown from San Francisco, it wasn't flown from Mexico. It came from a farm that's within an easy driving distance here of Stonington.
So we basically live in Jewett City, and every Saturday morning we get out of bed early and we drive 40 minutes to get here, no matter what. Rain, sleet, or snow. I've had surgery, I've been here with crutches. It's just worth it. It's 100% worth the food, the people, everything, what it's here for, you know?
Yeah, if you're wondering where America's gone, it's right here.
Exactly.
At the farmer's market.
That's right, with the people who are actually growing your food.
Yep.
These are the people who grow your food, so, you know, you can talk, it goes directly from them to you. It doesn't get any better than that, you know? It's fresh, it's clean,
These are awesome, real people. Phil right here,
yep.
Right behind us. He's an excellent gardener. His vegetables are second to none.
Yeah, all these guys. We
All
make
across
sure
the
we
way,
yeah.
Jessica's selling mushrooms over there.
Mushrooms, they've got everything here. I mean, we get our pickles here, we get our bread, I mean, cheese, coffee, everything. I mean, everything, you can get almost everything you need here.
And the prices really aren't that much different. Meats are a little more expensive, but for the
it's
most
worth
part,
it.
your regular vegetables,
Yes.
they're way fresher, they're going to last all week.
They're unsprayed, they're clean, it's clean food.
They're
Like when
picked today or yesterday, so...
You need it, it's good for your body, and it's good for your soul, actually.
Yeah.
It's good for you in all ways. It's good for everybody. It's good for the community, it's good for the people that...
At least try it out. Come down here and check it out. Talk to the farmers.
It's a great atmosphere. Even if you don't want to buy food, there's other things too. You know, they have a brewery with beer here that they make local. I mean, they have this is just a great
This
thing.
guy right here, he roasts his coffee beans somewhere in the building. Actually, it might not be him. He roasts them in Lebanon, I think, but there's a guy down at the end at the cheese shop who roasts his beans in the building.
Everything. They get their apples here and all the, I mean, it's the best food. I mean, it's the best food. It's awesome. I'm telling you. We cook almost 7 days a week, so, I mean, it's just the best food.
By the way, they're not paying us to say it.
No.
So if you care about what you're putting into your body and you want to put less chemicals in, then you have a much higher level of confidence that what you're buying at the farmer's market is probably better for you in the long run. Secondly, you didn't. If you care about your carbon footprint, then these things weren't trucked from the other side of the country to get here, which means you're only able to buy what's being grown in Connecticut throughout the year. And the third reason is you're supporting a local farmer. So most of the farms are they're multi-generational now, as in the parents and the kids are working on the farm. In many cases, the farm actually was handed down from their parents and their parents before them, which is a good segue then into a couple of the quite unique farmers that we've got here at the Stonington Farmers Market. I believe the farm that has been in the family and worked for the longest time, the longest of any farm in Connecticut, is the Davis farm that's here in Stonington. And Larry Davis has a number of unique products, from heirloom corn and tomatoes, which are the same seeds which his family has been using. And I can't remember what the number of years is, but it's like in the 200 to 300 years range. We have Stony Ledge Farm, which has a whole range of things from animals to greens and spinach. We have Dondero Orchard, which only does, well, I shouldn't say they only do, because they're primarily an orchard, and they do have some greens as well, but they have the most amazing peaches and blueberries and blackberries throughout the summer, and apples and pears. And in the middle of summer, to see these tables, you think it's just unbelievable that all this stuff could be grown here in Connecticut. We have a honey producer, and there's a whole stack of things that you can do with honey, from whether it's honey in the rough of mixing in the part of the beeswax with the honey, or the different grades of honey and the maple syrup, or making candy out of it. We also have a couple of young farmers, which is wonderful to see, and these are, I was going to use the word kids, I won't do that, but young people who decided that what they wanted to do in life was to become a farmer. And the young farmers work really, really hard, as all of the farmers do, and they do it because it's their passion. So they're not doing this because they want to get rich. They're doing this because they can't imagine doing anything else. And in addition to loving farming, they also love to talk about what they're growing and how they're growing it with their customers. And so over the years, one of the things which I've enjoyed by being in my role as the market administrator is getting to know every farmer. And so when I do my shopping each week, I can always have a bit of a conversation about what's coming in another few weeks. How much of this how difficult was it to grow this spinach in February, and there's always a story, and whether it's everything froze during the week, so now I've got freezer burn around the edges of the leaves, or things are growing, you can almost hear them growing in the hoop houses.
So one of the guys, his name was Wayne, I can't remember his last name, but Wayne, he was out of Sterling, Connecticut, and he was one of the pioneers really for organic farming. Yeah, so if you ask Paul over there, Paul will tell you that they used to use pesticides on everything. They never met one that wasn't good, but there was this guy, Wayne, who was always against it. And he kept pushing it, and it finally took on. I mean, he was doing this way before it was cool.
And now they grow all their food. Everything they have over there is unsprayed. It's never been grown in any kind of pesticides, no chemicals, no glyphosate, none of that Roundup.
So these guys have been doing it for decades. Is the difference?
Their apples have spots on them, but they're the best apples I've ever had. I mean, they're delicious.
And if you want a guy to break down an apple, Paul's the guy to talk to. He'll tell you about. I mean, it's almost like describing a wine when it comes to his apples.
It's awesome.
So, yeah.
I mean, anybody that has a passion like that for their food, that's the kind of food you want to eat, People who care about what they're doing. Otherwise, I mean, they're just going to spray everything so it looks perfect, but it's not going to have any nutrients and it's going to be poisoned. It's like
small scale, sustainable farming. This is the only way it can be done.
Dragon's Blood Elixir.
Ooh.
Every day, all-purpose sauce. You can't live without it.
Can't. It'll clear up your stomach, huh?
Absolutely. Stomach sinuses, it's good for what ails you, and guaranteed to cure bland food.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Summer Robo. I'm Emily and Karen.
And you guys are at the farmer's market today.
Yes.
Do you live in the area?
We go to school nearby at Connecticut College.
So do you come here often?
Yeah, we come here, I would say, almost every Saturday to get food for the weekend before we go to yoga. No, it's nice. It's beautiful space, beautiful energy.
Right. And I know you can talk to the farmers and find out exactly where the food's coming from.
Yes.
Is that important to you?
Yes, we definitely support local agriculture and prioritize getting our food from local farmers, and knowing where our food comes from is really important. And it's really fun to get to know the farmers too and talk to them. It's awesome.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. Bye.
Had an old hen, had a wooden leg, was the best old hen ever laid an egg. Laid more eggs than any hen around the barn. Another little drink wouldn't do me any harm. My old hen's a good old hen. She lays eggs for the railroad men. Sometimes one, sometimes two. That's enough for the railroad crew.